Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, today we're going to talk about a topic that I see pop up every once in a while, not only in my network, but on author forums and things like that, where an author decides that they're going to dive into another genre that is different than the one that they normally write within. And sometimes that genre is completely different than the other one. Now, that's really a testament to how talented they are in terms of the breadth and flexibility of their writing skill, but it does create a lot of problems. So let's talk about what you need to know if you're deciding to do something like this. Now, I think one of the biggest problems is that different genres have different markets, and they can be completely different people. So what that does is it increases your costs, and I think it's especially difficult when the genre is so different that it could alienate the primary audience. And here's an example. Let's say you write kids books, and then you decide, hey, you get an itch to say, I'm going to write hot, steamy, sexy novels. Well, those two markets don't jive at all. And some of it where I have seen this happen also are authors who maybe talk about business or motivation or things like that, and then all of a sudden their topics shift to religion. And everything they do has a religious base to it. Well, in some cases, I've just quit following those authors, and it's not because there's anything wrong with their religion. You can believe in whatever you want to believe, and that's fine. That's no big deal, but it's not relevant to me anymore if all you're going to do is talk about your religious beliefs. So you can really alienate your primary audience by diving into another market. And what also comes up with this is that some of these authors who say, okay, I realize, and they're smart enough to know that these are completely different markets, and some of it may be unacceptable to their primary audience. So then they want to use a pseudonym or pen name for the alternate genre that they want to dive into. And there are a host of problems with that too. First of all, you have to think, well, maybe at some point there's the possibility that your pseudonymous identity could be revealed. And I think with the internet, I think it's just more likely it could happen. And so that could cause problems for you. There's also the question of copyright registration. If you certainly want to keep this under wraps, that you do this alternate genre, you can register a copyright under a pseudonym, but there's pros and cons to doing that too. So you really need to talk to an attorney about how you should register your copyrights to keep your privacy with this alternate genre, as well as protect your work. So I would suggest talking to an attorney about that. And one of the things I would suggest, and this is a big tip, if you are going to dive into an alternate genre, you want to set up separate author central author pages on Amazon so that the all the books don't get mixed up with each other, especially like we were talking about, if you're writing kids books and then you write, really hot novels, you don't want those two mixed up on the same page. So you certainly want to have a separate author page for each pseudonym, pen name, and genre that you are publishing, and you want to keep those completely separate. In a similar vein, you want to have a separate website, a separate domain name, and a separate social media profile for each of your social profiles that is completely separate from your primary genre. If you think that there would be the opportunity or possibility that your primary audience would be offended by your alternate genre. So there's a bunch of questions I think you need to ask yourself before you dive into these alternate genres. First of all, how much is it going to cost you? Because it could easily double your marketing costs. Think about it. If you need to set up a separate website and domain name, and you need to have different advertising than what you would normally have to your primary audience, that's going to increase your cost, not only in terms of hard dollars for advertising, but just in time and effort and management. So if you don't have the time to do that, you might want to reconsider. And the other thing is, authors kind of get sick of their primary genre over time. If you've been writing the same type of books over many years, you just get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And so some of these authors, they want to dive into these alternate genres because it looks exciting and fun and different. And they're not really ready to do that. They're not skilled enough. They don't understand the market well enough. And so then their dive into this alternate genre becomes a disappointment. And then, then they try and, shift their gears to go back to their primary audience. And the shifting gears is hard, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and you get really exhausted from it. And so I think you also have to wonder, are you looking at these other genres in a kind of grass is always greener situation where you just think it's exciting and just because you're bored with what you're doing right now? You might want to take a step back with that and decide, why am I doing this? Why am I bored? Is it just because I haven't explored my primary audience or genre enough? Or do I need just a writing break? Sometimes you just need a break from what you're writing to figure out where you need to refocus and get yourself back on track. So because of the investment it would take to do a completely different genre, I think it really is necessary to take a step back. And you have to wonder, with some authors, they may think that this alternate genre, because they see maybe some of their friends or maybe some big name authors making a ton of money in this alternate genre, and they may think, wow, I could make some money over there too. But what they don't realize is that those authors took a lot of years. They may have some superior talent and expertise. They understand the market. So you can't just dive right in. And as we've talked about in a lot of the podcasts, is you're not going to make a ton of money from self-publishing right out of the gate. It is just difficult to do so. So it could be a long time horizon. And if you're just doing it because you're bored with your current work, it's going to be a years long journey. So, really think about why you're doing this. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what if my pseudonym or pen name cover gets blown? What will happen then? First of all, your readers in your primary core, like we talked about with some of the examples earlier, they may be put off by your alternate genre. And even if it's not just a public kind of dropping off, you may get some static from your family and friends who didn't know you were doing this at all. And they may be thinking, well, what else are they hiding? Or what else are they doing that we don't know about? Are they lying to us? So I think you have to prepare for that eventuality, even though, you can take a lot of steps, legally and whatnot to protect your identity and your pseudonym. But at the same point, there's always the possibility, and, how are you going to handle that? Now, you may be thinking, okay, is she just telling me not to do this? Absolutely not. If you've got an itch to scratch in some other writing genre, certainly you want to explore that. But at the same point, I would strongly recommend that you figure out your why for doing that and make some thoughtful decisions about how this will impact your self-publishing career and your investments. So I hope I've given you some food for thought. If you're just trying to do something new that's completely different than what you have normally done. And if you found this helpful, I would appreciate it if you would rate and review The Heidi Thorne Show. I used to say on iTunes, but there are some changes coming with iTunes after the Apple Developer Conference here in 2019. The iTunes platform is going to be changing, and they're going to be focusing instead on these apps for various content. So for example, there's going to be the podcast app, the Apple TV app, there's the music app, and then there's the books app, which is going to be a big deal too. And I know my audiobooks are there. But so if you're looking to rate or review the Heidi Thorne Show, I would go to the podcast app and rate and review there. That's probably going to be the easiest going forward. Also, and while you're on the podcast app and you've decided to rate and review this show, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss one of the episodes. But if you like to listen to your podcast on other places, I'm on Stitcher and Podbean. I'm on your Alexa. You just have to go to the editing pod skill and you will find the Heidi Thorne Show there. If you like the video podcast better, no problem. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel and you'll get all the episodes there. And of course, don't forget to share the Heidi Thorne Show with your author friends on social media. Now, if you want my books are on Amazon. You just have to go to my Heidi Thorne author page, which has all my books on it. I don't have a pseudonym or pen name at the moment, so you certainly want to go there and check out all of those books. It's on Amazon. You just have to type in my name. My author page will come up and you'll see everything. My print books, ebooks, and audiobooks. And my audiobooks are also available on Audible, and you have to go to the Books app on your Apple smartphone and you can buy and read them there. If you want to connect with me, my website is very simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode. In the meantime, have a great day.